famous name from Sebring.
Well, let's talk about the history of Sebring. You have to talk about Hurley Haywood. 3 victories here. The first one 20 years ago. What kind of memories does this place hold?
Well, for me, I love coming to Sebring. I've been through sort of 3 major course changes here. And it brings back, you know, driving a car like this certainly brings back memories, because 20 years ago I won the race in a car very similar to the one I'm driving this weekend. So I'm excited, and with a little bit of luck, I think we should do fairly well here.
But the history of this place, is this special to you?
Well, of all the racetracks in the whole world, I think that Sebring probably brings back more memories. This is the type of racetrack, because of the crowd here, because of the history. When you look back over 20 years, there's so many times each one is special for me. Each race I've been here is special. So, especially having teammates like Hans Stuck and Walter Röhrl they're such comics here. But anyway, it's special, and it's always a privilege for me to come back here and race every year.
Hurley Haywood, one of the most distinguished endurance racing drivers of all time, in a very special car for today's race, participating in one of 5 classes you'll be watching live here on ESPN in just a moment. We'll come back to starting grid at one of the most famous racetracks in the world, Sebring International Raceway, as preparations continue for the 41st running of the 12-hour Sports Car Classic. As we mentioned, there are 5 cars involved in today's battle among 47 machines. Here's Marty Reed with a look at some of those classes.
The exotic and expensive GT prototypes run under a power-to-weight ratio. Engine displacement ranges from Toyota's 2.1-liter 4-cylinder turbo to a 6.5-liter normally aspirated Chevy V8. Weight varies from 1,900 to 2,100 pounds, and with horsepower capabilities approaching 700, speeds will top 200 miles per hour. Camel Lights are appropriately named, lighter in weight, lighter in horsepower, and lighter in cost to operate. Engine displacement is limited to 3.4 liters, and turbochargers are not allowed. Without the extra boost, horsepower drops from 700 to 400, and the top speeds at Sebring will approach 175 miles per hour. Turning to production-based vehicles, the top dogs run in GTS. Engines over 3 liters, both turbocharged and normally aspirated. They may look like traditional production-based vehicles outside, but underneath beats pure muscle capable of 680 horsepower and 200-mile-an-hour straightaway speeds. GTU stands for Grand Touring under 3 liters. Turbochargers are not allowed, cutting horsepower from 680 to 375, but straightaway speeds will still reach 165 miles an hour. The newcomer to Sebring is the Invitational GT class. Seen first this year at the Rolex 24, these cars run under FIA and Le Mans configuration rules. The cars will top out at 500 horsepower and 160 miles an hour. Here's my partner, a wet Rick DeBrule.
Getting that way at the very least. You know, we were talking with Hurley Haywood a few moments ago. It was 20 years ago that he won this race, his first race that he won. He did it in a Porsche, a very production Porsche. Since then, a lot of things have changed. He's driven some very, very exotic cars here. But for this year, for Hurley and for Porsche, you might say it's a time to get back to basics.
When this Porsche won back in 1973, it was really the beginning of a new era here at Sebring. The prototypes were gone. Now, 20 years later, Porsche is back with what it feels is really the future of sports car racing.
This has a production chassis in it. All, you know, the interior, the gearbox, all that stuff is production. So what you see out there is almost what you can drive on the street. And I think that people really get turned on by that, because they say, hey, you know, I can go out and buy a Porsche, or I can go out and buy a Corvette or whatever, and have it almost like that race car in it.
Racing here in the Invitational GT class, this car is actually designed for the new rules at Le Mans, and the nameplate inside shows it's the first of its breed. And the man behind this car, just like he was 20 years ago, is Porsche engineer Norbert Singer. Making this 911 a racer was a completely different task.
During 20 years, a lot of things have changed on the Porsche. A 911 is still a 911, but we have a lot of changes in it. For making a Le Mans GT car like this one, a little competitive, it's a hard work.
But for a driver like Hurley Haywood, is this car a step backwards?
Driving around here with this car, I mean, it was a kick. It brought back some great memories when you're driving sideways through the corners on the entrance to those back straightaways. I mean, I remember those back in the days when we were racing 935s and the Carreras. You were all crossed up and sideways, and the tires were screaming. It's the same thing with this car.
You see the water on the hood with these three drivers. They've got Hans Stuck, Walter Röhrl, World Rally Champion Hurley Haywood. These guys like the idea of rain. One other thing, you know that car that won back in 1973, a little bit different. It was yellow, but these guys are hedging their bets. If you look very carefully right here on the inside of this, there's a little yellow stripe. They put that there just for a little touch of luck. We'll be back with a little bit more on what's going on here at Sebring. And as a matter of fact, we're just
running of America's greatest sports car extravaganza, the 12 Hours of Sebring. Let's take a look now at our starting grid with the help of our BF Goodrich. The Corvettes are. The field comes around. The Toyotas of Juan Fangio and his teammate P.J. Jones on the front row. The pace car is off. 12 hours of live Camel GT racing coming your way, and we have a green flag.
Now that's a traffic jam, as Crocodile Dundee would say.
99 goes out front. That is Juan Fangio. P.J. Jones in close attendance as Toyota takes 1-2 at the start of the 41st Sebring 12 hour. As they dive into this turn, you can see where a little bit of the old racetrack used to go, just outside those cones.
Slipping into third spot, there was the two Acura Spices there from the competing teams as we go back to the two Toyotas, sweeping around that long, fast right-hander down to the hairpin for the first time. I'm sure we'll see a lot of action down here this afternoon, a lot of outbraking and passing, and of course this particular corner is very tough on transmissions because you have to go down to at least first gear for these GTP cars, accelerate up there. It's a bit bumpy on the way out, and that's the sort of thing that can break transmission. So the driver has to drive here with a bit of care and attention, looking all the time. But this is a 12-hour race and not a 12-minute or a 12-lap race.
This corner obviously much faster. G-forces begin to build up. There's the number 31 GTS car going around a Nissan. Oldsmobile, Nissan, and Ford all represented in the GTS class. They are very competitive, and they're all right there in your picture.
That's the number 1 Nissan being driven by John Morton this weekend, coming to help with the driving chores. A nice little drive for John Morton.
John Morton is the most experienced driver in this field. He drove his first Sebring way back in 1963 in a Ford Cobra.
Correct. We're going to see a pass put on the car. No, yes, no, that's the Oldsmobile being hard driven. That's the leader in the GTS class. Of course, it's being pushed here by the number 5 car, which is the...
That's the Taylor, James Weaver, Jeff Andretti, Morris Shirazzi Chevrolet Spice. Good comparison right there between a production-based silhouette and a prototype car.
Not much quicker down that long Allman straight than the GTS car, quite honestly. Obviously much quicker through the corners because it develops a lot more downforce. So all these GTSs with those wings give quite a bit.
This is for 4th place. The number 30 Momo Nissan takes over the position from the number 19 Chevrolet Spice.
That's David Tennyson driving the Denon car, and the 30 car is being driven by its owner, Giampiero Moretti, who, of course, is 53 years old today, and I know exactly how he feels, silly old copper.
One of the best-looking cars on the grid and one of the greatest supporters of IMSA Camel GT racing over the years. Giampiero Moretti drove Porsche 935s. He drove Porsche 962s. He was even involved in one of the new prototype efforts that was contemplated for 1993 before new rules did away with the GTP cars. Now he has this Nissan. He says, I will be here in years to come. I don't know what I'll be driving, but I will be here.
Quintessential businessman, started off driving a Mini Minor and a Fiat Abarth, and decided he didn't like the steering wheel, so he made himself a steering wheel, and now he's got himself a 165-foot yacht off building steering wheels and street wheels as we go back to the two guys up front, the two Toyotas. A familiar sight to IMSA viewers over the last 12 months, and unfortunately for their competitors, a very familiar sight for them as well. In fact, the way they're going at the moment, there won't be a sight much longer. They'll be out of sight.
Dan Gurney's team pushing very hard. Juan Fangio, the defending Camel GT champion. P.J. Jones right there running in lockstep, and look at the way they're pulling away. Now Jones goes down to the inside and will take the position from Fangio. P.J. Jones was to have begun his Winston Cup NASCAR career at Atlanta Motor Speedway last weekend. When that was snowed out in that massive winter storm, P.J. had to give up the ride to come here to Sebring and race. So P.J. Jones, another familiar racing name, is on point. It's a Toyota 1-2. We'll be back. Team decided to send his boys back out on slicks. Now the leading car in the GT Invitational class, that trick Porsche 911 being driven by two-time World Rally champion Walter Röhrl, also came in while we were away during the commercial break, and he stayed on slicks as well, as you might expect from a guy who's used to going through turns at 90 miles an hour sideways. Now there he is, the last car in line to the left in red and white, traditional colors of Brumos Porsche. Walter Röhrl, one of the most quiet and level-headed men you will ever talk to. You almost wouldn't believe that he's a two-time World Rally champion, a winner of the Pikes Peak hill climb.
In fact, the current record holder, I think, at Pikes Peak, and of course he's had a ton of experience on the dirt, in the forests of Europe, Finland, and elsewhere, and of course he's just going to revel in these dodgy conditions, to say the least. He should be pretty exciting to watch.
No other man has won the World Rally Championship 2 years, except this one, Walter Röhrl. As you can see, they're still throwing water in the air. Now there's Scott Pruitt's Oldsmobile GTS car, Rick de Bruhl.
Now got intermediate tires, whereas Moretti did not stop, which of course may have proved to have been the best thing, as long as he doesn't go sliding off while the track is still wet.
My point exactly. We've seen a lot of shuffling around between tires. In fact, the Acura Spice team came in, changed a wedge, came back in and changed the tires. Already goes around. Just what I was about to warn about. The track is still wet, and some guys are taking some chances.
It's a pretty light marginal.
Curtis Turner once said he got a little bit behind on his steering coming off the corner as he added the power, and Giampiero Moretti suffered the embarrassment of dropping to the back of the field.
The trouble is, once they start to go, when it's wet like that and you've got slicks, I mean, there's absolutely no way they're going to stop. I mean, they just keep on sliding.
Now up here in traffic, Tommy Kendall wearing bandages on the nose of that Ford Mustang Cobra after he tapped Dorsey Schrader's Oldsmobile earlier on. There goes Walter Röhrl. I mean, we're watching for old Walter to flick it sideways.
And he did. He must have known we were watching him.
Let's watch this for a while. This could be fun.
Now, this is that open corner I was telling you about, where people do drive with a lot of uncare. He's got trapped in there by some slower traffic. I say slower traffic, it's a GT light car, isn't it?
He's about to get sandwiched. Now we're on the backstretch where everybody can pick their own line, and they do. Jim Adams comes underneath in that purple Porsche 962, but with the headlights, Walter Röhrl has given up some room to the #1 Nissan GTS car of John Morton.
And I think that's Wayne Taylor going on the inside, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Now there's another GT car coming up behind Walter Röhrl. It's one of those Chevy Corvettes. Oh, we've got cars everywhere racing back past our announce position at 150 miles an hour and throwing up big rooster tails of water. Now right in the middle of your screen, number 20 right there, James Adams is trying to hold off Wayne Taylor in that white Chevrolet powered Spice for position in the GTP running and in the overall. We watched earlier as Taylor went underneath and took the position. Gave it up on a pit stop, no doubt. Gonna take a look downside, heading down for the hairpin.
Wayne Taylor taking the inside line. Tell you what, Walter Röhrl's giving Jim Adams a good run for his money too.
Battle for the lead in the GTS class now. That red and blue Nissan 300 ZX Twin Turbo trying to hold off that Oldsmobile